Howdy YouTube, Pungo Briar, sitting down here on my balcony on a beautiful day, nice spring day. I think it's about 68 degrees. I'm smoking a Rossi Rubino bent billiard. Just got it not long ago from a pipe nook, and it's a nice little pipe. And I'm smoking Cornell and Deal Barbary Coast. I really like that tobacco. It's a little bit sweeter than Old Joe Krantz, I think, and not quite as strong. But it's a good daytime tobacco. I don't like to smoke real strong tobacco in the daytime. Makes me sleepy. But I hadn't posted a video in a while, so I really don't have anything much to talk about. I've been giving some thought to what I want to do with my channel. I'm going to run some ideas by you guys and see what you think. And I've got a lot of learning to do. One of the things I really want to learn how to do is how to embed a photograph into these videos. And I'll explain why shortly. But just for today, I thought I'd sit out here and smoke a pipe and check in with you guys. And I've got another sword for you to look at if you want to. If you don't, you can turn the video off. But one of the things that I want to do a video on is my great-granddad. And his first name was Alan. He was born in the early 1880s. And actually, I think before that. He died when he was 46, 47 in 1908 in Greenville, North Carolina. And he was murdered. He was shot by the son of one of the town's prominent citizens, and very wealthy family. My great-granddad's family was not wealthy. His wife died in 1900, left him with all the kids, and he was a grocer. He ran a grocery store. And basically back then, there was no government assistance or anything like that, so the children were farmed out to different relatives, aunts, and that sort of thing. And my grandfather, whose name was Roy, was about 16 at that time. And he just went out and went to work for a blacksmith. And this is North Carolina, right at the beginning of the 20th century. I think Greenville might have had a few paved streets, but one of the photographs I would like to embed in this is a photograph of Evans Street in Greenville. And it's the main street in downtown Greenville, and it was dirt back then. Very few automobiles. There were mostly buggies and wagons drawn by mules and horses. And that photograph of Evans Street shows it has the location in it where my great-grandfather was murdered. And my dad never discussed it much. I don't think his father discussed it with him. And it was it was almost like our family was ashamed of it. My sister did some research. The story was my granddad was in a saloon and he was drunk and got shot and killed. And but my sister did some research and found the old newspaper articles. And the newspaper language back then was a lot more flowery than it is now. And the headline, that's another thing I would like to be able to embed in an in-depth video on this. The headline read, "Tragedy Strikes, Whiskey the Cause." And turned out that my great-grandfather was not drinking. He was not drunk. They said in the article that he was sitting in Harper's Palm Gardens partaking of a punch. And of course, everybody rolled their eyes and said, yeah, right, punch. He was probably drinking some sort of mixed drink or something in there. But the son of the prominent family, these were men both in their 40s, and my grandfather was a widower. The son of the prominent family came in, and it said in the article that he was drunk, and he attacked my great-grandfather with a knife, and my great-grandfather fended him off with a pocket knife, or fended him off with a chair. And at that point, the man pulled a gun out and shot my great-grandfather. And my great-grandfather grabbed him. He was a big burly man, and grabbed the guy, took the gun away from him, and shot him. And my great-grandfather died the next day, and the follow-up articles said that the son of the assailant also died the following day, but he had been taken to a town about 20 miles east of Greenville called Washington, where there was a hospital, and he died. 3 days, the next day after he died, he was buried immediately. And there was, I've been to that grave, that man's grave, and there is a granite monument on top of that grave that's got to be 10 feet long and 6 feet across and 5 feet high. And it's not a tomb, it's solid granite. There's no telling how many tons that thing weighs. And in later years, before my father died, he told me that the story in the family is that rich guy didn't die, that he was spirited out of the state, and that the casket, it was a closed casket service, was just full of rocks. And if that's true, then that's why they put that big granite slab on top of it to keep anybody from digging it up. But anyhow, it was still scandalous. And I did some research and found out that Harper's Palm Gardens, the quote saloon that my great-granddad was sitting in, was not a saloon. I looked through old newspapers and I found out it was a confectionery, which back in 1908, confectionery sold candy and I guess milkshakes, ice cream. It was a soda fountain. And he was sitting in there he ran a grocery store right next door to it. And he was sitting in there with the owner of the grocery store. I guess they were discussing business. It was 10 o'clock at night. And that man, his last name was White, came in drunk. And I have looked, I was a policeman at one point. I've been at the courthouse. I've looked and looked. I've tried to find the coroner's report because I really want to know what it was all about. I don't know if it was over a woman, because both of those men were single. I don't know if it was over money. I just don't know. But anyway, I want to do an in-depth video on that someday, complete with photographs. And not long before my mother died, I was asking her about my great-granddad, and she said, your dad's cousin Beth might have a picture of him. And so we went over there, and she did. She had a little miniature painting of my great-granddad, and which just tickled me to death to see that. And he was a big man. And anyway, that's the story, basic story. And I'd like to go up to Raleigh, maybe check with the state archives and see if I can find that coroner's report, because both men died, so there was no trial. And it was scandalous, and the courthouse in Pitt County burned in the 40s, and a lot of old family records and coroner's reports burned up with it. That is not uncommon in North Carolina. There's a lot of courthouses mysteriously burned down, and embarrassing records that go back in certain families' genealogy just disappears. But anyway, if I can go up to the State Archives in Raleigh and maybe find a copy of that coroner's report, maybe I can solve the mystery. I also have some more information that leads me to believe that he was spirited. That man was spirited out of the state, and he was never ever mentioned by that family again. So I don't know what happened to him. He might really have died and be buried there. I don't know. But I'm going to show you this sword. This is a Taureg Takuba. I don't know if it's focusing or not. And these swords are carried by the Taureg people in northern Africa. They're known as the blue people because their robes are dyed and dyed indigo blue, and that dye leaches into their skin. And the interesting thing about these swords is, I don't know if you can see it or not, but the hilt on the guard on this is covered in leather. And the reason for that is that the Taureg people think it's bad luck or it's taboo to touch iron. And these swords aren't even made by them. They're made by another tribe. And they still carry them today. I think this was from the early 20th century, late 19th century. And I mean, they're not real high quality swords, but it's a cool sword. So, I wanted to show it to you guys. It's got a cool scabbard on it. Let me turn this camera and I can step back and show it to you a little bit better. Get a little bit further away from it. But this is the sword itself. This is the scabbard. It's just a leather scabbard. I don't know with this lighting, it might be all you can see is a silhouette of this thing. But it's got some designs in it. Anyway, that's my Taureg Takuba sword. And like I said, I haven't done any videos for a while, so I wanted to, but I really want to improve the quality of my videos and do them right. That I want to do maybe a series of videos on my great-grandfather's murder. I'd like to do one on my great-grandma Savage. I actually remember her vaguely. When I was 3, 4 years old, she died, but she was blind, and I remember sitting in her lap and her touching my face to see what I felt like. But she was born right at the end of the Civil War, and she remembered federal troops coming into her house, which still stood when I was a little boy, and wanting Applejack. I guess it was hard cider or apple brandy or something, but that was probably during Reconstruction because she was born, I think, 1863. And so to remember that, she would have to have been 4, 5, 6 years old at least. Anyway, that's the end of this video. I'm going to sit out here and finish up my Barbary Coast. And I hope y'all have a blessed day. I hope God is with all of y'all this week. say your prayers, and this will be Pungo Briar signing out.